Welcome to the I Work For Me podcast. I'm Melina Lewis, an author, marketer, yoga teacher, and mom, and I'm passionate about people who have created their own business opportunities and who love the freedom of working for themselves. Welcome to the I Work For Me podcast. Today I have Fiona Fitzpatrick, which is like the most sexy Irish surname I've ever heard, on the show today. We are not going to talk about the origins of her sexy Irish surname, but we are going to be talking to her about all of the amazing businesses that she owns and runs, and her kind of like her way and her capacity for three businesses. I mean, hello, did I say three? Let me say three again, that are all running concurrently. And and just learn about how she does it, where the inspiration to do all of this came from. So without much more warbling on from me, hello, Fiona, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Melina. Thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure. It's divine to have you here. Before we jump into Fiona now, can you tell us the little girl, Fiona? What was it that she wanted to be? The first kind of memory you have of you as a little girl.
Everybody always laughs at me when I say this, but being a good Catholic girl, I always wanted to be a nun. That was sort of my earliest sort of like career aspiration. But that quickly changed down the line to something to do with animals, which is interesting now. But I was going more the marine biology route because what little girl doesn't love dolphins and whales and things like that. But my science marks weren't up to scratch at all for that at school. So that was a bit of a pipe dream. But yeah, a nun, believe it or not, which everybody can laugh at.
Well, I love it. We can all have aspirations, right? I think that that's not a bad one. And I don't know if you've watched Warrior Nun on Netflix.
No, I haven't. Everybody keeps on telling me I must watch it. So yeah, I'll add it to the list.
It's a really cool one. I love it. It's apparently from a cartoon, comic book. So it is quite interesting and original. It's very, very fun. I enjoyed it. So I definitely recommend that. But so tell us, how did your love of animals evolve? And tell us about your businesses today. What are you up to?
Okay, so my businesses, my current businesses, because I've had a few different businesses over the years, but my current businesses all center around things that you care for and things that you love. So my 80% of the time business, which is what takes up 80% of my time, is my short-term insurance brokerage. And according to the new legislation, we've actually got to refer to it as a non-life insurance sort of product that we sell. But I think that's a little bit more confusing to the consumer. But I think a lot of people know what short-term insurance is. It essentially covers things that you can touch, that you maybe can't afford to replace tomorrow if something happens to them. So we're not insuring people's lives, we're not insuring people's medical bills, that type of stuff. It's more like, I've got a car, I can touch it. I've got a business asset, I can touch it. Those are the types of things that we can insure.
Okay.
And that is obviously, it goes quite deep into dealing with businesses and their owners. So as a result, we end up insuring the owner's personal possessions as well along the line, be it house, car, their children's iPhones, which cost a fortune nowadays. And everything that sort of fits within that category. So the most amazing thing about the brokerage and doing business insurance for other businesses is I've learned how other businesses make money, and it just absolutely fascinates me what people do for a living. Wow. And how they can actually make money from doing some really bizarre things, but have successful businesses along the way. And I have an absolute passion to learn how people make a living, because it's not always the way that you think, and the products that you think that they might be selling, or the services that they might be selling, is not necessarily what's actually making them the money. It's very interesting to hear, and I'm sure in talking to people podcasts about what they do for a job, you're like, that's different. But there really are some different ideas out there. And that's what sort of excites me and gets, from a business perspective, I'm like, okay, well, tell me more. And I've just learned so much through that, which is really, I mean, I've come from an insurance background, so I've grown up in an insurance household. My partner works in insurance. He pays claims for a living.
Wow.
And sort of manages the claims department. And I mean, my dad's still in the insurance industry. So we have a lot of insurance fueled conversations at home, but it's so interesting to speak to people in other industries and find out how those business models work to a T, and then be able to give them the right advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when I started the brokerage 6 years ago now in January. Happy birthday, broker.
Happy birthday.
When I started it, one of the products that kept on coming up that our clients were looking for was pet insurance.
Okay.
Specifically for cats and dogs. And it was a bit of from looking at big sort of commercial insurance risks in terms of where you've got millions of rands of buildings and different types of liabilities and stuff like that, to then looking at a 300 Rand a month pet insurance policy. It seemed a bit on the outside before I actually started selling it. I was like, wow, this is a lot of paperwork for a pet policy. But when I started actually looking into it, and when I got my dog Bailey, who's my golden retriever, I was like, well, I suppose I've been selling pet insurance, so I should really insure my dog. And thank goodness I did, because that dog has been a designer dog with designer vet bills and designer problems. So she's been a poster child for pet insurance, and that sort of changed. It didn't change my outlook on it, but I was like, wow, I was like, people don't realize the value of this 300 Rand a month in terms of what it can turn into in terms of vet bills.
Yeah.
And Bailey is a very, very spoiled child. She was an only child until about 2 weeks ago. But she's a very, very spoiled dog. And she's got the best of everything. So when I started doing that, I came across the opportunity to purchase an existing business called Cat Nerd, which was very small at the time. And it was very obviously focused towards cats. And it still is focused towards cats, but we've got a dog part of it. And that grew in terms of toys and accessories and things for pets that, that are just really cute and fun and, nice to have. And it's been lots of fun marketing for Cat Nerd, because I mean, I can't think of anything better than spending my time putting, glasses on pictures of animals and things like that. And I was away on the weekend with a bunch of women that have their own businesses, and I was busy commenting on a dog's Instagram post, because dogs have their own Instagram pages now. Okay. And my comment was, "Who's a good boy?" And then I thought to myself, never did I ever think for work I would be commenting on a picture of an animal on an animal's profile somewhere on the internet, just to So it's sort of evolved. It's got a very comical approach, Cat Nerd. It's all about the fun of having an animal, whereas from an insurance perspective, if you're insuring your pets, it's quite a serious thing, and it's an important thing, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to have a bit of fun in life. We've got plush llamas and plush unicorns and stuff like that we sell through there, and then as well for the cats, because the cats have always been I don't know if you have any animals, but
2 dogs, 2 cats, 2 ducks, 2 children.
Oh, 2 ducks.
They're in amongst the animals. Yeah.
So the dogs always get a lot of different things because they destroy toys. I mean, they murder toys for fun, but they murder them with love, so that's all right. But the cats, cats are fussy at the best of times.
Yeah.
But you can buy something for a cat and it can last for a long time as long as the dog doesn't get hold of it. So we've got like really nice cat scratchers and, cat carriers and things like that, which are sort of more investment pieces, which in terms of what you would, be purchasing, it will last for a long time for the cat. Yes. Whereas with the dogs, the toys, we know they don't last that long.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But the cats are often left out, all the cool stuff is for the dogs. So we really saw some cool stuff for cats.
Fine. Yeah, no, cats are, I love both cats and dogs. I'm not I'm a complete fence sitter. I don't prefer one over the other at all. I love them both because they're so different, and because of their different quirks. So, but yeah, I can see how I could definitely spend much more money on dog stuff than on cat stuff, because I promise you, we've got a cat and she's got fancy bowls and a thing. I mean, and she's literally was kind of taken out of a township on the side of a road, and this cat has got all this stuff. But I mean, do you think like you can even put the little collar with the bell on this cat? I mean, you must be joking. And the bowl, it just actually wants to eat out. It just wants to drink the water out of the basin. So like waste of time to buy products for that creature. But the dog would totally happily, like, I don't know, it would wear anything you put on it, or like fancy leash, or yeah, there's all sorts of like stuff that it would go for. Cool.
Yeah, I like the analogy that dogs are like toddlers, when they want to please you and they want to do everything for you, and cats are like teenagers.
Totally.
So I do like that as an analogy. It's that attitude that a cat has that a dog doesn't quite have that attitude. They've got attitude, but it's a different type of attitude.
Absolutely. Yeah. And kind of breed specific. Okay. So that's two of your businesses. So you've got kind of insurance, you've got Cat Nerd. And what is the third business that you've got?
So I've recently just purchased a business called Lilies Online, which is also in the pet space, but it's more geared towards your nutritional needs of your pets. There are a couple of toys and things with, well-known suppliers that are in the South African pet space, like Rogues and Kong and things like that. But the main focus of Lily's currently is on the food and the treats.
Great.
And it's, we've got all the major vet brands on Lily's. But there will be a bit over the upcoming months, there will be a bit of a restructure in terms of what it looks like, possibly what it's called. But it is called Lily's Online currently, and it was named after the previous owner's first dog, who was the CEO. So they sort of work on the basis of, depending on what you feed your dog, how often you need to feed your dog, when you need to order. So you're never running to the supermarket just to buy supermarket branded food, and you never run out. Right. So don't let your dog's bowl or cat's bowl run empty. Yeah. But we've also got food for bunnies and rabbits and parrots, and but the main sort of clientele in that type of space at the moment is currently dogs and cats.
Brilliant.
For their monthly food requirements.
Which
is I do sort of foresee over time, in terms of Cat Nerd and Lily's, they won't merge, but I would like the brands to align in some way, shape, or form. I haven't quite got my head around how I'm going to do it yet. I've got ideas, but I've got to just sit on it and just just sort of see how we're going to take it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd almost like to go back and kind of like, so when it was the insurance business or these other two businesses, although that you've purchased these, but kind of like, setting up a business is quite a thing, So what like, and I would assume in terms of legals for an insurance brokerage, like what did you have to have set up in order to set up your own business?
So there's quite a lot that's involved, but I would definitely say a lot of luck is also involved in terms of timing, in terms of, who where them from. So there is all of that goes into it. But an insurance brokerage is quite a mission to set up, because you need to be licensed. Firstly, you need to be qualified. So you need to be qualified with, a certain amount of experience on top of it in order to be able to run an insurance brokerage, or you need to know somebody that is, willing to step into that role until you've got that experience.
Right.
I was fortunate that I was qualified when I started, but I did have the assistance of my dad, who's been in the industry for quite a number of years,
Right.
as long as I've been alive, actually even longer. And he sort of guided me along the process in terms of applying for a license. And when I started the insurance business, we did own a 50% share of another broker, which meant that we started the business with a monthly income already coming.
Okay.
Which in hindsight was the right thing to do, because it's very hard to build. Anybody that sells insurance, be it life insurance or short-term insurance or medical aid or whatever the case is, it's very hard to start from a zero base. Over time, that 50% ownership ended up becoming 100% because we purchased the other guy out. But at least to start with, we knew that we would have a set amount of income, there and thereabouts every month, so we could budget accordingly.
Right.
The legal requirements and the compliance required from an insurance perspective is monumental at the moment. I think it's becoming more and more paper and less time with the actual client. But the laws are there the laws and the requirements in terms of the compliance are there to protect the client.
Yeah.
Because I think for years, people have been not always taken advantage of, but just not quite understand exactly what it is that they're purchasing, what is it that they're paying for. And I mean, I know like everybody else, when my debit orders go off every month, I'm like, oh, here we go again. But it's it is such a it is a financial services product, and it does ultimately have it does have, purchasing the wrong product could result in a client or a business, whether their business continues or whether, their lifestyle continues the same way it was before. So it's a very impactful product, which often I think, when you just need to insure your car or you just need to insure your home, you sort of gloss over all of that because you're more interested in getting the car or getting the home or whatever the case is. Yeah. So there is, there's a lot of legislation at the moment, and there is going to be more even in the future to protect the consumer, which I think is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, do you think would you recommend kind of people going into this business? You probably find now during during COVID that people have lost their jobs and maybe they're thinking of starting new businesses and maybe, within the insurance field. How easy, because you've said kind of you bought into a business, which is great. And then you could, grow that and build off of that and eventually buy the other guy out. But, if someone was starting from scratch, would you completely not recommend that? Or, so do you think this is a viable industry? I know like insurance is that grudge purchase without hopefully being too offensive to you, although I think I was offended.
No, not at all. Not at all. It is a grudge purchase until you need it.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, thank goodness I had that.
Yeah.
So entering into the industry, I'm quite young as insurance agents go, because it's a lot of bald old men. When I go to seminars and stuff like that, that's what you sort of see that's what you see in the back of your mind when you think insurance salesman or insurance broker even. I mean, that's even worse. You sort of just think old man, just like knocking on doors and whatever the case is. And there is a lot of that, but there's not, in my opinion, there's not enough youth, and nobody ever grows up from a child and they say, I want to work in insurance. It doesn't matter what type of insurance, I just want to work in insurance.
Yes.
Everybody falls into it because there are quite a few jobs available in it. And there is quite a need for certain jobs, along the chain of insurance. Nobody says, I want to be a admin clerk at an insurance company. Nobody says, I want to be a CEO of an insurance company. It's not a dream until people end up in it. From my perspective, I grew up in it. So I, from a very young age, was in boardroom. I used to do my homework in boardrooms of insurance company, which my dad owned. having conversations with grown-up adults about, all sorts of different stuff, everything from work to life to whatever. So I sort of saw it as quite a friendly environment growing up, because, obviously I was there as the boss's daughter, or, just there doing my homework or whatever. But I had such interesting conversations with a multitude of different people from different walks of life that all ended up in these positions of where they were. And for the most part, I think most of them really enjoyed it, because in the industry of insurance, you can be whatever you want to be. You can be if you want to be an accountant, you can be an accountant. If you want to be a legal person, you can be a legal person. If you want to be out on the road speaking to clients every day, you can be a salesman. If you want to just sit behind a computer and get very technical with certain different aspects, you can do that. So there's all these different facets of insurance. You can get as specialist as you want to be. I know somebody that just specializes in insuring equine. That's it. So they do everything horses, so horses as pets, and show jumping, and sport horses straight through to race horses. Everything from a horse, a foal going to a stud farm, and then breeding and all of that. So you can get really, really specific, or you can be quite general. So there is a lot of opportunities, but in order to start your own company, you need to have a bit of experience. You can't, even just taking over an existing one, you need to have a certain amount of qualifications and the experience that goes with it, because there is a lot that goes into just the legal framework, never mind then the specialist side of it.
Right. Okay, cool. So, I mean, you must have kind of like figured this all along the way. So what did you think was what was quite critical to starting your own business? And you can keep that quite general, or you can be specific to insurance. And also, what did you learn? What's a good hack in terms of your business?
So before I went on my own, before I went entirely, like I am now responsible for my own salary, my own destiny, I think I was quite oblivious to how much work there was actually going to be involved. I knew it was going to be a lot of work, so don't get me wrong, but don't underestimate what you've got to put in order to take out. That was a huge lesson for me. It was a really, really huge lesson for me. I expected that, I would have my processes and my systems down, because I had it all sort of in my head, ready to go for a long time before I started, because I just wanted to just take that leap. But I was like, oh, it's fine. I can do this. It's easy. It wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And you really can't put a price on that on the spot, like learning experience. You've got to make decisions. You can't sit around and sort of second guess yourself, whatever. You've got to give people answers, be it the suppliers that you're working with or the clients that you're working with. Nobody wants you to sit and try and make up your mind in terms of what you're doing. You've got to make decisions. You've got to make calculated decisions, and you've got to back up your own decisions when you make a mistake.
Right.
Which that's a big lesson to learn, because I think everybody gets stuck, or not everybody, but I think a lot of people get stuck in that perfection. Like, I just want to be perfect, and it's not going to be perfect all the time.
No. Yeah. I think you're right. And especially in business, what we find is that if you're sitting there trying to perfect the business before launching it, what you do is you get stuck in, analysis paralysis, and you can't actually move forward, and you kind of trying to second guess what the problem might be. But I promise you, until you actually start that business and start doing stupid things, you won't know that you're doing stupid things. So yeah, absolutely. It is definitely about kind of letting go a bit of that perfection. Sure, you can bring it into the mix at a later stage, but just get going, and then kind of perfect it as you go along. Okay, so then, I mean, what have you learned in terms of about yourself and in running this business, you know, whether it's a hack for the business or a hack for your life? What kind of like stands out for you?
So sort of in terms of hacks of running a business, I truly believe you've got to keep your finger, particularly in the startup phase, because I think you have different phases. Like I think once you reach the terrible twos, that's a whole different, that's a whole different, the problems that you have in your startup phase to the problems that you get in the terrible twos are far different. And, that although in a lot of the times they are the same problems. But the startup phase is you mustn't let yourself get overwhelmed with all the tasks you've got to do, and you mustn't strive for goals which you're not going to be able to attain. So be it if you're going to start a business and you're going to say, right, well, I'm going to do 7 million in 12 months. If you're starting from a zero base, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Even if you're starting from a base of possibly, where you could possibly do 1 million, you're not going to double it in a year while you're busy dealing with setting up framework, especially if you're doing everything yourself. Because a lot of the time what happens when you start a business, you do everything yourself until such time that you're able to, factor in bringing in other people, whether they are, permanent employees or whether they become sort of like semi-permanent contractors that you're using for specific things.
Yes.
But there are certain things that I would never ever skint, never ever like run away and skint on, in terms of make sure your tax is done correctly from the start. Don't try and pick that up, when the next tax return is due. Because if you haven't spoken to a professional in terms of how your business is actually going to work, you don't want to be hit down the line unnecessarily with massive fines and whatever. Rather pay for that consultation up front, find out what it is that you need to be doing and make sure it's done. And if you can't do it because you don't have the time to do it, you then unfortunately have to pay for it, So things like tax, things like legal, depending on what industry it is that you're in, make sure your legal requirements are met at every point of your business. Particularly when it comes to your contracts. Your contracts are so important. And copying and pasting a contract of Google, and I'm saying this from experience, is not the best way to have a contract in place. Yes. Rather, if you can't afford it, save for it and then pay for the consultation, get it done professionally. Because if that's not your area of expertise, don't pretend you can do it. Amending a contract that's been written for you is maybe a different scenario. But if it's from start to finish a contract that you've just found somewhere on the internet, rather don't do that.
Yeah, no, do not do that. That is a very, very.
Unless if you're a lawyer, then you're fine on that point.
Okay.
Then you might need to.
Yeah, but
then you might need to outsource different things.
Absolutely.
I see a lot of the time. I'm in quite a few Facebook groups with particularly female entrepreneurs, and a lot of the times everybody gets so hung up on this marketing, social media. What do I need to post? How often do I need to post? What do I need to do? And if it's not your zone of genius, don't stress about it. Those types of people that are maybe more from a technical point of view, and whatever it is that they're doing, you're better to do the very basic until you can afford to pay somebody else to do it, and then pay somebody else to do it, because they will probably, if that's what they do for a living, they will be better at it than you are. It'll probably take less the time that it takes you to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But everybody, I know, and it always comes down to money most of the time, as people don't want to put that money down. But obviously don't pay exorbitant amounts if there's people that are doing it for slightly, at discounted rates and whatever the case is. But just have a good look at what is out there and what is available, and then make your decisions. Is it worth my time? Is it worth my money? Do I need to do my own website? You probably don't need to do your own website, but in order for somebody else to do it, you've got to do a certain amount of groundwork for them.
Yes.
I can't just phone a web design 101, Google who can make me a website and they pop up. I can't just phone them and say, right, well, I've got a short-term insurance business and I want a website, because then I won't be happy with what they give me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like you do have to know what you want, especially when dealing with creative businesses. You need to give clear briefs. You need to know what you want to look like. So you need to have examples of websites that you like. You need to know the functionality that you want in a website. So you need to think about that and do all your homework. And it is important. You don't have to be a tech guru. You just need to go on other websites and go, oh, I like that. I like that. I like that. Get it costed. It'll probably cost too much. Downgrade to the next level and start there, you know? So that's kind of like how you have to behave. And the same, absolutely, with social media. No, it's supposed to be very easy, and it is sort of up to a point. And then all of a sudden it becomes technical jargon that is like, it is a foreign language. So yeah, there are lots of digital agencies, small, that do kind of, you know, for a certain amount a month. And I actually interviewed a woman called Lisa Bell. She runs an agency, and you can kind of buy little packages and do, you know, according to your budget and what you're trying to do. And you can do campaigns. So yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Just talking about selling your business. So I think, you know, you were saying earlier about, you know, the bald insurance man knocking on the door. Hello, I'd like to sell you some insurance. You know, or my worst, my pet, the phone call. Hi, you know, we calling from insurance. And I'm like, my husband deals with the insurance. Goodbye. And like, you know, I have made that a thing. Like, my husband does do the insurance stuff just so I don't have to deal with it. And those calls. And so, I mean, that's kind of the perception out there in the market. So how are you doing something different to engage people and talk to them positively about short-term insurance?
So my approach, I mean, I've done a lot of networking. I think I'd say 50% of my business has come as a result of networking. Mm-hmm. So not necessarily the people that I meet at networking events. It's networking. There is an art to it. It's speaking to people, understanding who they are, understanding what they do, and asking people questions. So I know insurance to most people. There's this block that goes on in your brain when somebody says, oh, I do insurance. You're like, okay, that's very nice. And it's the same when they phone me, because they phone me as well. I often get phone calls of people trying to sell me insurance. And I don't like cold calling at the best of times, but it's more, it comes up in discussion and conversation. And, you know, when those people that I meet at networking events are at a braai, when we're allowed to braai, you know, it will come up and say, somebody will say, oh, you know, I'm having such a hard time, or my premium's gone up so much, or I can't believe the amount my debit orders are every month, whatever. And because I've had a conversation with the person that is having the conversation with their friend or their colleague or whoever it is, a lot of the time I would get a recommendation. You know, Fiona mentioned that maybe she would have a look, she would have a look and see if she could restructure it, or if you could maybe look at it from a different angle, because there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Right.
And particularly what happens in the insurance market, and it is changing ever so slightly as the years go on, but the insurance market and the insurance models, they're pretty much the same that they were 10 years ago, that they were 20 years ago, just maybe with a few more products or a few more bells and whistles. But the essence of what you're actually covering is, you know, is very similar in terms of what was being done 10 years ago or 20 years ago. There's just now a lot more choice. So there's a lot of noise in that space. I mean, you don't want to Google insurance, because the next minute you just get all the adverts from everywhere. And it becomes this overwhelmed thing. Or if you switch DSTV on, it's all insurance related adverts. If you listen to the radio, it's insurance related adverts. So there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of terminology that goes into insurance, but that you can break it down to the most basic of what you possibly need. And do you need the bells and whistles? Because the bells and whistles, although they are seen to always be free, or, you know, as an add-on type benefit, you do end up possibly paying for them down the line. And it really depends where a person is in terms of their life, their financial status, where their business is at, in terms of what they actually need. And I truly don't believe that you need to purchase things that you are not going to use. There's a lot of insurance products that are available where they will drive you home if you've been to a function and you've had 1 or 2 drinks. And they are very nice products at the face of it. But I mean, in the current climate that we're living in, nobody's going anywhere anyway. I mean, only until, a few days ago, could we actually drink again? Do you need to still be paying for that? And the answer is no, because our lives have changed dramatically.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, where businesses were operating from offices or or an actual specific location, there's only going to be a certain amount of businesses that need to do that in the future. Mm-hmm. So how we need to look at restructuring it down the line is actually looking at where you are today and how you foresee your life's going to be over the next 3 months. Because in a time of COVID, as we're currently living, I don't believe we can plan more than 3 months in advance, for big term things. Yeah. So these types of things, and because the insurance that I sell is for over a short-term period, short-term means that this could be the situation today, but it could also change tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So it's entering into those types of discussions, but it's really more from our perspective in terms of the clients that we've currently got, is we really understand how they work. We understand what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve. And, if I hear something in a specific industry, be it the restaurants with the alcohol or whatever the case is, a couple of our restaurants didn't open after the alcohol was prohibited from sale. It wasn't worthwhile them opening. So their insurance requirements are very different when they're closed to when they're open. So we just drop them a line. We just say, look, like we've seen, if you want to just change this, we might be able to save you a couple of rands here or there, whatever the case is. So it's just really just keeping in tune and, understanding what's going on in the various different industries to help those businesses when they need it, even if it's not in a claim situation.
Right. Okay, cool. So, I mean, that's an amazing service that you are very connected with your companies that you're insuring, because things like almost one investment brokers, they are, they're all very excited to help you set up your policy or whatever it is. And then so this would be the opposite of what this would be long-term insurance. And then like you hear from them once a year when they need to restructure your provident fund, and then like that's it, for the rest of the year they could seemingly care less what happens to you or your finances or your life.
Because
so
involved with the claims, so as the claims come in, we know if your vehicle's been involved in an accident, because we're processing the documents. We're helping you with the claim. We're helping you if the claim is not a claim. A lot of the time we get notice of different types of losses, and we as brokers are not allowed to reject a claim because that's got to come from the insurer. Right. But a lot of the time somebody will say, well, this and this and this happened. Can I claim? And my advice to them always is, in terms of the policy, I don't believe it's covered, but let's submit it and let's see what the insurers say. And depending on volumes of claims that are coming in, depending on workload, whether it's December or whether it's March. The amounts of claims vary, and sometimes things go through that my understanding in terms of the policy are not covered, but if insurers want to pay the clients, then they must pay the clients.
Oh.
So we do help the clients with their claims, and if an insurer rejects a claim that is not necessarily that we don't believe is fair, or the client doesn't believe is fair, we will help them with the process to go down the line, to take it up the chain of command. Right. And to try and assist them where we can. So we are connected. We do speak to the clients quite a lot. We try not to bother them, but, you know, people always like to hear from us if we want to save them money. So from that perspective, you know, I do think I think it's a really valuable service, which a lot of the very big companies can't offer because they've just got so much volume that they can't do that.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, in kind of like you've got this brokerage now, 6 years old. Well done. Congrats. I think that's good. And then your two newer businesses. Anything that kind of you have learned, whether it be through a failure or, you know, stubbing your toe or knocking your head on something that you think is worth other people knowing so that they don't have to do the same thing or learn that hard lesson?
I think I did mention it before with saying you can't do everything. Like, yes, you can have oversight of everything, but you can't do everything because you'll end up in an absolute tiz and a spin and not know if you're coming or going, and you'll start dropping the ball where you really need to be focusing. So things like marketing. Now, marketing is important at any stage of the business, because without a presence and without people knowing what you do, you know, that I hate the saying of build it and they will come, because if they don't know about it, they're not going anywhere. They're going to stay where they are.
Yeah.
So learning to talk about your business is very, very important, even if it's just with somebody that you know, I don't like the term elevator pitch, because I think it makes everybody feel like, you know, like a little bit anxious inside, like, oh my word. But just being able to articulate, what is it that you do? Because don't get technical. What do you do? Because even though you might not be in charge of marketing, and down the line when it's a massive company, somebody will be paid to be doing, you know, big campaigns and stuff like that. If you can't quickly just say to somebody, oh, okay, well, I do X, Y, and Z, then they'll still have no idea what you do, but they'll be like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a long 3-minute or 5-minute conversation, and I get stuck into that trap myself quite often, because I sort of feel like what I do is quite technical, and if I just tell you that I'm an insurance broker or I own 2 online shops, you're still not going to quite know what I do, but it gives you an idea in the back of your mind what I do. So just learn to articulate in the most simplest way what it is that you do, and possibly why you do it, and possibly, again, who you do it for, because those are very, very specific things and they all go into your elevator pitch.
Yes.
But it is so important to just be able to just get to the point.
I actually like that. I think that's the what, the why, and the who. I think that's really nice. If you can say, you know, I'm a writer who writes for, you know, women between the ages of 30 and 65, and I do it because I love writing, you know, for example. I think that is really, really stunning. Yeah, I think a lot of people could benefit from that. Brilliant. Thank you.
So I need to take my own advice there, because as I was saying it, I was like, actually, I need to do that as well. So yeah.
Yes, you do. Just write it down. What, why? What was it?
What it is you do, why you do it, and who you do it for.
And who you do it for, exactly. So just last but not least, can you tell me, and this is like a bit cheeky, but what is it that terrifies you about running your own business?
There's quite a lot that terrifies me, but looking into the bank accounts and there's no money, that terrifies me. What I've seen blow up over the last couple of months, and I think it has a lot to do with COVID and people being at home and whatever the case is how quickly a brand or a person can be. So if you're on the online space, you can just be branded as something that you possibly aren't, or that your business is something that it possibly isn't, just by the like social media frenzy that sort of happens in the online space. I don't know what to call that, but that does terrify me quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, saying the wrong thing, or
yes.
And then it gets to the wrong group of people. So, and I think that's always been a big scare of mine in insurance, because whenever you look at any of the big insurers' social media, it's a lot of people complaining because they feel very hard done by in terms of what's happened to them. And yeah, that's always scared me quite a lot.
Yes. People going on social media and ranting and venting there in a completely unconstructive way. They're not following the channels of, that can actually do something. They're just giving someone a bad name, and it's always very one-sided. So it is absolutely terrifying. I'm with you there. I completely agree. Yeah.
Particularly from an insurance perspective. I mean, I don't know if those types of scenarios could apply to the pet stuff that I'm currently doing in terms of Cat Nerd and Lilies. But yeah, you've got to maintain your reputation. But I mean, that could happen in person, but I think it's a lot harder for it to happen in person. If somebody's standing, on a podium shouting about a mistake you've made, for example, everyone would just brand them as being a bit crazy, maybe. But online, there's certain people with certain influence that I find that's quite a bit terrifying. But I don't let it keep me up at nights, because I don't think I've made any mistakes that are that large. But I just, when I see it happening to other people, I just sort of, like, my heart actually always goes out to that person, because even if you respond and you do all the right things, it's there. It's like a stain on something perfect, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I think it is. But as you say, don't do your best and don't let it keep you up at night, and hopefully it will not come to pass. But yeah, thanks, Fiona. It's been like incredible chatting to you. So before we go, can you tell everyone how they can get hold of you?
Oh, sure. So I am quite active with the pet businesses online, particularly on Instagram. Great. So Cat Nerd is Cat Nerd ZA, and Lily's Online ZA. So 2 separate Instagram. Or they are they're both online shops. So you can go to catnerd.co.za or liliesonline.co.za. And my brokerage is called IF Admin, I for India, F for Foxtrot, and then the word is admin, ADMIN. And we're ifadmin.co.za online.
Brilliant. Okay, great. So those are 3 things to keep everyone definitely occupied. And as I said, I love the connection around pet insurance and then how that kind of pulls through. I hope there will be lots of pet insurance ads on the Cat Nerd and Lily's Online websites. Sorry, my marketing hat is never off. So I hope that to see that, and wishing you all the best for these new ventures, and then ongoing success and strength in your current insurance business. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the I Work For Me podcast. I hope you enjoyed this interview and that you feel inspired to take your idea and business to the next level, not only for yourself, but for fellow South Africans too. Please listen in weekly for interviews with more interviews with South Africa's most inspiring people, and connect with me on Facebook or Instagram at Melina Lewis Author, or on YouTube at Melina Lewis, or if you don't mind, consider supporting the show for a few rand a month by finding me on Patreon at Melina Lewis. Have a great week and namaste.